right, folks, we are at 1:30, so in the interest of respecting everybody's time, we're going to get started. Hi, my name is John McGarry. Just want to make sure that everyone knows to please mute your lines in Zoom. If you don't know where to do that, if you find that main menu at the top of your screen, if you're full screen, and all the way to the left there is a microphone icon that you can click to mute. And if you have any questions, please send them through the chat feature, which on that same bar there, if you click the More section, you'll have a chat option that you can send questions to me either privately or to the group. Doesn't matter, but I'll keep that window up and running as well throughout the presentation. So with that, thank you, welcome. Good morning to those on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those on the East Coast. My name is John McGarry. I work for Yamaha in the commercial audio division. I am in a role that handles Eastern Canada in the CIS category, which is Commercial Installation Solutions. We are going to be talking about multiple categories today as part of this webinar. And so really what our agenda is today is to kind of go over some product announcements that we had at InfoComm this year. So for those who weren't able to make it or were even there and didn't get a chance to see it all, we're going to go through just a real high level view. We don't want to get too much into the speeds and feeds. Those can be conversations we can have after the fact. If you do have more in-depth questions or want to talk about applications, we'd be certainly happy to have those conversations. And then talk about some conference room solutions and ideas throughout the product line, and then some questions. So without further ado, one of our biggest announcements at InfoComm was for our PCD amplifiers. And so these are two different versions of them, PCD for touring and PCDI for installation. They are 4-channel amplifiers with 4 analog inputs as well, and 16 channels in and out of Dante. They come in so kind of those two flavors to start off, right? You have your touring versions basically, or your installation. They are available in either 600 watts per channel or 1200 watts per channel, and each of those channels maintains its power, but you can run it at either 8 ohm or 70 volt. 70 volt obviously only on the installation ones. There is an onboard DSP that we're going to get into a little bit, and sample rates up to 96K. So certainly for those high fidelity installations in performing arts centers, that kind of thing, we can reproduce up to that level. We're going to go into depth a little bit more on these than some of the other products, because I do think it's one of the more unique offerings. So on the rear, as you can see, what the difference is between the two. It's more of a connections is all, right? So XLR inputs and speak-ons on the touring models, and Ethercon for the network connection on the Dante side of things, whereas on the installation, they are block connectors, RJ45, and block connectors on the inputs as well. What I think makes these really interesting is that there is actually a matrix mixer built into the processor. So we actually have a 20 inputs. We have that 16 in via Dante, and then add 4 on top of that for our analog inputs, and then an 8 zone matrix mixer on top of that. So now we can really start getting clever with how we're mixing and matching what our inputs are doing and where they're going. You have these combined with that. It allows for flexibility, expansion, etc. Oh, there we go. So the DSP, what does it do, right? So we do have a 16-band parametric EQ in there. There are delays and limiters provided. There are 32 user presets. We have built-in tunings for our Yamaha loudspeakers. So any of you that are familiar with our matrix or open architecture DSPs, the MTX series or the MRX series, there are built-in speaker output tunings for our own speakers. These are editable EQs, but at least they give you a nice, starting point for when that you're using a specific model, make and model of the speakers. Load monitor measures the impedance of channel output, and then there are a lot of protection parameters, everything from monitoring the temperature of the power supply, peak limiters, the overall amp temperature. These are all things that are included in that DSP. That's all going to be reported back to a control system. Speaking of control, so there will be third-party control where an API will be published, but we can also configure these through our ProVisionaire amp editor, which will be coming out this fall, as well as ProVisionaire Control and ProVisionaire Touch. So if you're not familiar with the ProVisionaire platform, that is our iOS control platform that allows you either PC-based programming on the ProVisionaire Control side or ProVisionaire Touch with an iPad. These come really in handy for even a lot of times I have people that maybe are using one of our consoles that allows you to control a system, maybe even hand volunteer an interface that they can control and actually run an event or run a meeting without actually having to touch the mixers. And I think what makes this interesting is that these PCDs ultimately end up becoming really a large mixer amp just with a ton of power. So if you're familiar with our MA2120 or MA2030 small little mixer amps that we make, these are kind of a much larger horsepower version of this, where I see this can be even used in applications such as retail and hospitality. A lot of bars and restaurants that want to have a more immersive experience. Sometimes they want a quieter lunch crowd, but at night, for our Canadian friends, let's say it's maybe an NBA Finals game, and you really want to have that place pumping after they win the championship. You have that horsepower for larger format speakers. You maybe only have a handful of inputs, a TV, background music, and maybe a paging microphone or something like that. Where now all of a sudden you can have it in just one unit where it is your amps and your inputs done all in one, and you can control that all with an iPad that your bartenders might even be using for point of purchase, right? So there's a lot of different applications we can see with this, even within some of the spaces that aren't traditionally thought of, and all in one box. So some other things that got released, right? Our DXR series is a Mark II series now. This was the speaker that we did do in collaboration with Nexo, which is a French speaker company that Yamaha owns, that is a wholly owned subsidiary that does larger format line arrays for front of house, etc. They do smaller format speakers as well, but this is developed in collaboration with them. A new, larger, 1 3/4 inch neodymium high frequency compression driver, which also actually reduces the weight of the overall unit, which is an important thing if you're, a lot of time powered monitors are being used to move, whether in rental and staging or in portable systems and the corporate world. There actually is a 3-channel mixer, mic and line level, built into these. So even for those kind of small portable systems where you might just need to throw these on a tripod and have a microphone and some music playing for, a corporate event in a lobby or something like that, but it all of a sudden becomes this very small portable system that you can use for that. Even small bar and restaurant, if you have just an acoustic guitar and a microphone playing, you can do it that way. It is a 1100 watt Class D power amp, so these will get loud. I believe peak is 134 dB. There are front of house and main or monitor mode capabilities that changes the voicing of the speaker depending on what use you're using. And there are rigging points and dual angle pole mount sockets as well. So rigging points so that you can permanently install, or obviously the pole mount, so that allows you to use these in a portable situation. And next, so one of the things that I think Yamaha does really well is, establish a platform, whether it's in our processors or our consoles, and really use firmware updates to enhance and add features as they go along. So this spring, the TF, the TouchFlow series of consoles, which are kind of our entry-level Digital consoles came out with a version 4.0 firmware. That just these are just some of the features that they added. They added a scene fade time feature for theater applications, improved channel view capabilities, some of the things on the Stage Mix app, which is an iPad app that allow you to record and playback control from the USB storage side. So someone can just cue either a song to be played from the USB or initiate recording to that USB device. Mute group assignment capabilities, and mute control for our new DZR-D series, which are Dante powered monitors and subs. And I just want to make sure that people understand that TF consoles are not Dante native. You do need to buy an expansion card, which is the NY64D card, in order to have Dante capability. So they do have the ability to add it after the fact. But if you were to control the D series DZRs, that would be something you'd have to add the card for as well. On the CIS side, so we had two new in-ceiling loudspeakers, the first of which is a low-profile 2-inch, 2.5-inch driver in-ceiling speaker. These are really used mostly for plenum spaces where you might have HVAC or just challenging things above kind of the ceiling grid that don't allow you to have a full-depth can in there. So these 2-inch ones kind of get added to the family. They do have 160-degree conical coverage, down to 68 hertz, which is pretty amazing for such a small driver. 30-watt program, and they tap down to 1 watt, so you can really do some of these kind of audio by the acre, low background music applications with these. There is an optional pendant mount kit for these, which we'll see in a minute. They are available in black and white, and it is a magnetic grill and obviously plenum rated as well. So these are kind of rounding out the VXC family that we have, which we have our 4, 6, and 8-inch ceiling speakers, and now these are added as a low profile 2-inch driver. Its older sibling is our VXC-8S, which is an in-ceiling subwoofer. So a lot of times in either conference rooms or restaurant and hospitality where everything needs to go into the ceiling, but we do want to have some low end that traditional ceiling speakers will not be able to cover. This is a way that you can do that. So these are an 8-inch sub. These are either 8 ohm or 70 volts. But just, especially in conference rooms where maybe they are watching some program audio where you might want to add a little bit of low end to there and do it in a way where it's just in a ceiling speaker. These are very install friendly, as is all of the VXC series. Carrying handles, magnetic grill on these ones as well, and anti-drop tabs and ceiling tile rails that you can just pop them up and install. So just kind of rounding out that family for all installations where we might need to have some low end or getting under some of the things that happen above the ceiling grid with the 2-inch that allow us to round that out. On the pendant kit, so really excited about this. I know those of you who work in even a lot of open offices now have exposed ceiling, but they need to have either background music, paging. Restaurants, certainly when we go into them these days, it's rarely that design where you don't have that open ceiling. And so we came out with the PKC4, which is a pendant kit that fits 2 of our speakers. So the VXC2F, the one that we just saw, the low profile 2-inch, or our VXC4 ceiling speaker. I did put an asterisk next to that bullet point because the VXC4s are being redone and manufactured now, and probably actually on a boat by now, to accommodate those hang points on the kit. So there'll be VXC4s that are manufactured after a certain date that we want to make sure are being used if we do need to do that. They are paintable as well, and they do ship as single units, but it's basically just that rigging points and that open kind of bucket that you can drop the speaker in and hang that way. So anyone who has been, you know, I always tell people, go into pretty much any restaurant in the next 2 weeks that you go to and look up, and you'll probably see open ceilings. And this is a way to allow to get that coverage for background music and paging in an elegant way that looks great. So ProVisionaire, some changes to ProVisionaire Touch 3.5, which will be coming out this fall. Again, this is a free software that allows remote control and monitoring. These are both, this is something we debuted at Infocom this year, is a Japanese video company called IDK that has video matrix switchers that will allow us to change inputs on that, which is interesting. But really, this is kind of your all-in-one, control point for most of our products. So it's all of our matrix processors, the MTX and MRX series, our digital mixing consoles, so everything from the TF consoles that we just looked at a little bit ago, but also CL, QL, no Rivage on control on that. You can control some select loudspeakers, ones that are networked, XMV and PC series amplifiers, Nexo amplifiers, Rio and TO stage boxes, MusicCast products, which if you're not familiar are our home audio video receivers that allow for streaming audio, and even our Disclavier products, which is our networked pianos. I was actually in a installation in Erie, Pennsylvania I guess it was last week, who the restaurant has all of our CIS as far as our background music, but they also had bought a grand piano that sits in the lobby that's one of our Disclaviers that the bartenders can control whether that plays or not, if they want to turn it on and off, select it as a source to go out throughout the whole restaurant, etc. So it really is a large platform and ecosystem for control for all of Yamaha's products. And really, this is where ProVisionaire comes into play for, conference room use, restaurant and hospitality, like I was just saying, lecture halls and multi-purpose rooms. A lot of colleges will end up using and leveraging ProVisionaire for maybe volunteer events that are being run by volunteers, where, say you have a large, mixer in one of your lecture halls, and instead of letting students maybe mess with that console, you can actually just hand them an iPad that gives them control over a couple inputs, and they can't really mess anything up, so to speak, which cuts down on your human resources who maybe need to be there to support events, etc. So it really becomes a tool for exposing an audio system to an end user where they can't get confused, because you're really only exposing what you want to them, setting limits on all your faders so they'll never blow the system, etc. So really, ProVisionaire as a control ecosystem is quite powerful. My personal highlight from Infocom was the debut of this product. So Active Field Control, AFC, is what we know on, is we're in our 4th generation. So this product line actually started in the mid-'80s, and Yamaha has been developing and refining it over the course of 25 years and are still in the midst of it. And what AFC is really a way to transform a space. So when you're designing a performing arts center or a performance space, there are some things, obviously mechanically, that you can do to change the acoustics of the room. That's also a pretty expensive thing to do. And so when a space has a lot of different types of performances happening and needs to be agile in what it sounds like, whether one day it's a huge symphony orchestra, the next it's a string quartet, the next it's just a spoken word, where somebody's just giving a TED talk, right, or something like that. This processor and product allows you to create any acoustic environment, from earlier reflections, right, to a Gothic cathedral. The demo of this at Infocom was something that I saw people who don't work for Yamaha and were talking about on LinkedIn, saying, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like this." It is a server-based platform, and so it allows longer, more natural-sounding reverb times. It is a 96K sample rate on this, but it really allows you to, with the press of a button, change the acoustic properties in a very natural way of a performing arts space based on who is playing there. This is something that a product that whenever an institution or a performing arts center purchases it, we actually send people out to tune it. It's a very it's an involved process, but one of the more jaw-dropping products that I think Yamaha makes, and we make a lot of them. On the Nexo side of things, so we did introduce two new cabinets, the P12, which is a smaller format. This is a 12-inch driver on here that can be used as a monitor, fully installed or put on sticks. There's a lot of different options on that. 140 dB peak performance. These cabs go down to 60 hertz. They do, one thing that's cool is when you pull out the grill, you do have adjustable patterns to it. So 60 by 60, 90 by 40, or an asymmetrical that are actually just a magnet flange that you shove in there. So for especially rental units where you do need to maybe change that coverage pattern based on different events, you can very easily. And actually, this is one where in the demo room as well, I like to watch people react to how things sound. And there was a dealer of ours who's from the Metro New York area who was kind of answering some emails, and and as soon as they fired these up, his head shot up, and he kind of started looking around and put his phone away and started walking around the room. Actually, no, he didn't stick his phone away until we kicked in the sub to go with it. And that's when I knew, we had something special with this at this price point, and at this kind of horsepower and clarity. So this L15 is the sub that goes with it. It's a 15-inch driver, 40 to 120 hertz. And again, multiple hardware options to install them or do pole mounts, etc. Question on the P12 with the flanges, do they come with? I believe they come with. I'll double check on that, but I believe they come with. They are not a separate SKU. And so lastly, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the conference room applications for the CIS line. Actually, to back up, that's all that we had from Infocom. Again, if you have more in-depth questions on specifics on any of those categories, please feel free to either write me on the chat, and we'll find a time to talk offline about getting into more detail. As far as webinars go, I'm a big fan of keeping them brief but informative, and really, as a vehicle to start some conversations with you that you might have. But on the conferencing side, one thing that I always keep my eye on and notice that Infocom more and more is that the conference room has changed. It's not that it is changing, it has changed. And companies are relying more on UC platforms that are handling all the audio and video and even phone requirements. I think if I look on, I'm going to look on our participants list here. But I can, out of the 31 people, we have one person who has dialed a telephone to join this meeting. Everyone else is doing this on their computer. And I'm a big fan of really observing communication habits of what people are doing. I was in the airport a couple weeks ago and saw there was 3 people, all under probably the age of 40, who were not having phone calls, talking to people. They were all on FaceTime, talking like this. Headphones in, but they're clearly, that video part of it has just become much more of a natural part of it. And so, as that generation becomes more of the workforce, this is the communication habits that they're going to want. You know, at some point, you know, making a phone call is going to seem something you only do if you have to because you're stuck in the car or whatnot. And so, you know, the conference room is going to follow those trends, right? So companies are going to be leveraging that UC platform that they've invested a lot in, whether it's Zoom like we're on today or Microsoft Teams, Blue Jeans, whatever. And so we need to really ultimately design toward a more natural video conferencing experience. You know, I think we all have seen the huddle room explosion, right, for ad hoc meeting spaces. So like today, I'm talking to you on our CS700. But I think what we need to start really looking at are solutions for mid to large size spaces that need to be easy to install and manage, be reliable, and perform at a high level. And I think the high level part of it's a really important part. Because the you know, these rooms that are as we see companies that are doing more small huddle room spaces that are more ad hoc, the larger rooms that they are investing technology in are typically the more important rooms where important decisions get made. These are C-level suites and some of the larger spaces where some more, you know, the content of what's actually happening in those rooms is really you know, of paramount importance. And so we need to have solutions for that. And so I just want to kind of get people thinking today about what's happening outside of those conference rooms, right? So security is not just about outsiders kind of penetrating a network or whatnot. Security is about having confidential conversations in conference rooms, boardrooms, that you don't want people, you know, perhaps listening in and hearing things that they don't want to hear. You know, as we all have probably struggled with when it comes to conference room acoustics, a lot of architects like glass, and glass is not exactly the best, you know, barrier for what I would call information seeping through. But corporate background music applications, right? So, you know, I had somebody, I can't remember where it was, but I went into the lobby of a company and the receptionist had a you know, a little sign on the desk that said VP of First Impressions, right? And I thought that was a great, you know, way to think about their role in an organization. And so, you know, companies, when you are coming into the lobby, to have light background music playing, you know, in entryways, even outside coming in, but having that application be something that's part of the experience of going into work every day, whether it's for their employees or visitors. And just having stuff in bathrooms or washrooms, et cetera. And also system automation for specific areas. Oh, and we do have confirmation that the person who is on the phone is actually also connected via PC. So here we have, you know, 30 odd people in this meeting and nobody's actually on a phone. And so what I wanted to show was just kind of this layout here where, you know, this is a divisible room here where we have a processor, we have switch, but we have a lot of things happening outside the corridor here because we want to prevent people from listening in on what's happening in the room or even from room to room when one's not being used. And so how do we do that? Right, so first on the Dante side of things, right? We want to make sure that we're networking all our audio so we can control it, monitor it, etc. Our MRX7D processor allows for analog and Dante I/O, automated events through a scheduler. So let's say, you know, let's not have to worry about turning off our background music, you know, at night. We can have it scheduled to come on, you know, 10 minutes after the day's over and 10 minutes before the days begin. We can have schedulers kick on and off a speech privacy module. So this is on the bottom bullet point here. The MRX7D actually has a speech privacy module built into it to allow added layer of information security. And what that speech privacy is you know, basically what we do is we choose one of four sonic landscapes, basically. It's either ocean, forest, street, or office. And what it allows you to do is mix in those kind of either natural or even office sounds and mix in human voices that are making vowel and consonant sounds that just kind of chatter it. And the way I kind of draw the analogy is that it's like making everybody wear really the wrong prescription glasses. And so, you know, if you take the glasses off, you can see the person, you know their name, you can see who it is. if you put the glasses on, all of a sudden you can see that a human being's in front of you, but you have no idea who it is. You can't focus. You can't see anything. And this module allows you to not only run the conferencing that's going on in the room, right, but also it can allow you to do background music and send it to that lobby, that washroom, etc. And also allow for some of those high-level rooms that we're doing more integrated audiovisual in, and have that be a protected space where high-level conversations are always going to be masked by people, listening out the door. It's a very robust matrix mixer, up to 64 zones. It can Dugan Auto Mixer, which is built into all of our processors and mixers for large event spaces where you might have large mic counts. We'll auto mix them all, so you can have up to 24 of those in multiple instances. So it's a really, really powerful processor that not only is servicing what's happening in the room, but can also service things that are happening outside the room that are required in this modern day and age. On the speaker side of things, so last fall we came out with the VXL 16P series Dante PoE speakers. So these are 16 1-inch driver line arrays that really deliver a lot of great speech clarity and intelligibility. And I think this is the most important part here, while giving participants a natural video conferencing experience. For years we've been putting ceiling speakers in video conference rooms, and while those certainly give you the coverage that you'd want, it's an unnatural experience. The sound isn't coming from the display where you're seeing the people's faces that are interacting with you. And I think that's the ultimate success of a video conference, is really simulating that natural face-to-face experience without being in the same room. And so this allows you to do that while still getting the volume that you need. These will measure 91 dB at a meter, I believe. It's either 89 or 91. They have a controlled vertical pattern, so it's going to reduce reflections off the ceiling and the table. There's no need for a power amplifier in these spaces because they are PoE, and most of your conferencing racks are going to have a switch in there to run all your network devices. And this will also allow you to network background music to lobby spaces and or accompany digital signage. So a lot of, we go into a lot of companies now where you walk in the front lobby and there's digital signage happening of what's happening for the day, whether it's the lunch menu or just even a logo of the company that you're coming to that's a display. And so this allows you to, network right and flank those displays with some audio and not have to worry about getting up into this plenum space and really focus that, that coverage pattern across the lobby. So there's a lot of different applications for these, but it all definitely does start in the conference room. And last but not least, so the switches that you would use to manage this Dante traffic, the SWR2311P, which is a layer 2 switch that allows PoE. It's got a 30-watt budget per port. It manages all your Dante traffic. And our XMV series amplifiers -D, which are the Dante versions, are multi-channel amps that allow you to network audio from your processor to the locations in the building that maybe require 70-volt speakers, where you might have ones outside at the entryway or in all your restrooms, a lobby, or even overflow areas too. I think in cafeterias where you might have a large all-hands-on-deck company-wide meeting where not everybody can be in the main conference room that it's happening, so you can pipe all of that audio, pardon me, to a cafeteria location that might have background music playing during lunch, etc. So there's a lot of different applications for that can all kind of start with that MRX7D processor, but really service a lot of different areas at the enterprise or at a college, etc., that are outside of maybe the lion's share of what that room is going to be used for. So with that, I know we're almost at the 35-minute mark, so I like to keep things short and sweet and give you a nice overview of what's going on in Yamaha world. If there are any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat, or feel free to email me or call directly. That's fine. We'd love to have a conversation about that, or feel free to reach out to your DataVisual RSM as well. And thanks for your time today. I'll leave it open for a few minutes if anyone's got questions, but or even if you feel brave, you can unmute and do it that way too.
Thank you, John.